All right, welcome to another week. I am so encouraged that you are listening, and I hope to deliver some really good content to you this week. Some stuff that will help you analyze your walk with Jesus, analyze your friendships, and hopefully grow closer to the Lord. Last week, I started a 2-week series that we're doing on identifying and avoiding toxic relationships. We want to avoid toxic relationships, but that also means that we need to understand what a toxic relationship is. And I think that word is vastly overused, just like the word gaslighting is used for a lot of things that are not gaslighting in this day and age. But in its heart, a toxic relationship is really talking about habitual, repeated patterns of sin that are not repented of and not addressed in a relationship. So it's funny, like what the modern world calls toxic relationships, the Bible would just straight call sin and label the specific parts of it. I did, while reading through the book of Proverbs, come across Proverbs chapter 20 that has some excellent little tidbits that identify multiple different toxic people, poisonous people, sinful, habitual people that we want to avoid having in our lives, because our friends do determine the direction and quality of our lives. And you want to be a good friend. You also want to be able to recognize good friends, and you want to distance yourself from those who aren't. Last week, we talked about a few in the acronym of MAD gas. So we find MAD gas in Proverbs. I had a classmate when I was in 5th grade that had mad gas. It was so toxic that the teacher told them to get up and leave the room anytime they had to let a fart, because it was so bad it would disrupt class that much. That's how mad the gas was. It was toxic. In Proverbs 20, we find mad gas. So last week we talked about the M, the manipulator, the A, the addict, the D, the deceiver, the G, the gossip. And this week, we are going to finish. Did I do manipulator, addict, deceiver, gossip? Yep. And this week, I'm going to do the last couple. Today, we're going to talk about the arguer, the second A in mad gas. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 3 says, "It is an honor for a man to keep aloof from strife, but every fool will be quarreling." You know, for some people, arguing is just a hobby. They're more interested in being right than being in relationship. And I want to ask you that question. Do you care more about proving your point? Do you care more about being right? Or do you care more about the relationship? And if you're close friends with an arguer, prepare to be exhausted on a continual basis, because they will not relent until you give in to their side. And a lot of times there's, a lot of these other elements of toxic relationships that come in. Manipulation comes in, deception comes in. But I'll say that I remember a period in high school where I wasn't so manipulative, and I don't think I was super deceptive in this term, but I loved arguing. It was like a sport for me. I was pretty good at words, and I was pretty good at thinking on my feet. And I loved arguing. I thought about becoming a lawyer because I loved arguing. I'm thankful that I became a pastor because I get to use words, and I'm hopefully not as big a jerk as I would have been otherwise. Not that all lawyers are jerks, but I would have been a jerk lawyer. The arguer. Are you an arguer? Are you somebody that has to have the last word? Are you somebody that has to insist that people see your way and see your point? Do you care more about being right than being in right relationship? If so, that's sin. And you need to call it a sin. You need to identify it as sin. You need to repent to the Lord, and you need to repent to the people that you bludgeon with your arguments all the time. Do you argue with your parents all the time? Is it something where you can't just hear what they have to say, chew the meat, spit out the bones, and then just do what you're asked to do? Do you constantly, chronically talk back? Do you constantly, chronically try to manipulate and show your way? Look, that's going to come back to bite you. It's going to hit you hard. If you are an arguer, the Lord's not going to honor that in your life if you're a sinful arguer, or if you're somebody that just insists on being right all the time. And the same thing, if you have a friend who just loves to argue, isn't it exhausting? Isn't it something that you're just so ready to be done with? Well, I would encourage you, before you drop them, before you just completely, cut off contact with them, it might be time to have a conversation with them. And it might be, some of the words. Sometimes it helps if you have the right words. And I think the right words in this case could be, hey, it feels like really often you care far more about, me admitting that you're right than you do about our relationship. This is something in a marriage that my wife and I have to talk about sometimes, because if there is an arguer in the relationship, it's going to be me. I don't yell, but I'll kind of bludgeon my point sometimes. And I have to remember, I care more about the person than the topic. And that may be something that you have to say to your friend if you feel like they're in a chronic arguing state. Hey, I care about you, but I feel like you care more about being right than being in right relationship. So can you cut it out? Can you maybe work on saying my side of things? So at least I know you understand, instead of just me, you trying to get me to say, you're right, you're right, you're right. That's a great relationship tactic, by the way. Getting somebody to say, that's right, instead of you're right. Where if you say that's right, it's because you've been able to say their side and you understand where they're coming from. If you're in an argument, if you're in a disagreement with somebody, that's a great practice to have. Say, hey, can I try to restate what you're saying to make sure that I understand it? And then, as fair as you can, you try to restate their side and get them to say, yeah, that's right. That's what I mean. Even if you disagree with them, you can at least show them that you see their side, as opposed to being somebody bludgeoning them, saying, until you see my way, until you say you're right, I'm going to keep pounding you on this. You don't want to be that kind of person. You don't want to be with that kind of person. Why? Because it's an honor for a man to keep aloof from strife, but every fool will keep quarreling. Don't be a fool, and don't be with fools. You got to call out the arguing sometimes for what it is, that it's sin, and seek to restore relationships. So I hope that helps today. And tomorrow we talk about the last one. Can't wait to tell you the S in mad gas. We'll see you tomorrow.